Hi everybody, I'm Bill Russell. I'm the Associate Dean International at the University of Dundee School of Business. And today we have another in the Hot Dundee corner important interviews. And our important person that we're interviewing today is the principal of the University of Dundee, which is David Maguire. Thank you very much for coming and joining and talking to us today, David. Can we start by just you telling us a little bit about your background, where you came from, and how you came to Dundee?
Well, morning, Bill, and morning, everybody. I grew up in Lancaster in the northwest of England. I was educated in the UK school system and was fortunate to be able to study at the University of Exeter and then the University of Bristol. And I spent several years as a university academic before moving into working in a global IT company specializing in geographic information systems. I did that for about 20 years before returning back to the UK to work in universities. And I worked for a while at the University of Greenwich, where I was the Vice-Chancellor, before having the opportunity of coming up here to Dundee about 4 months ago.
So something that always interests me, which has just popped into my mind, is where did you get your interest in doing academic work? I mean, does it come from a particular teacher or your mother and father or uncles? Whereabouts in your background actually led you down this route?
Well, like a lot of people, I was strongly influenced by key individuals in my life. And in my particular case, it was a few teachers at school who really motivated me, got me interested in geography, actually, at a pretty early age. And I pursued that as a hobby, but also academically. I was always quite interested in sciences and practical subjects to do with technology. So I've been really fortunate to be able to combine a real interest in technology on the one hand with a real interest of geography on the other. And geographic information systems is what brought those two together nicely for me.
I rather like geography. Geography is a background. You have all of the human geography and demographics, but also the physical geography as well. Geographers at dinner parties are always very interesting people. They can talk about all of the big questions as we go forward.
That's right. Yeah. Synthesis is a key part of the geographer's craft, being able to bring together multiple information from lots of different sources and combine them and bring them to bear on a particular problem, a region, or something which is cross-cutting across many different areas.
Now, had you been to Dundee before you actually came?
I'd been, I think, at least once, possibly twice before. Funnily enough, when I was in Exeter, a long, long way from Dundee, we came on a field trip in our third year to study the glaciology of Scotland. And we spent some time in Dundee and went out onto the Cairngorms and into the mountains and some of the deposits along the coast. So I do remember spending at least some time in Dundee and the surrounding area. And I think I may have visited briefly on a holiday on a vacation trip once as well.
So this was to not look at glaciers, but to look at the effect of glaciers in Scotland?
Well, yeah, of course, there are no glaciers in Scotland. Currently haven't been actually for more than 10,000 years. So yes, this is looking at the effect on the landscape and also the deposits which they've left on the floor. So Fife's a great place, which is plastered with glacial material, which accounts for the interesting topography, which you can just see actually on the other side of that bridge behind me. That's Fife.
So the famous railway bridge. So that was your early contact with Dundee. And how did you come to be the principal here in Dundee now?
Well, I wasn't really anticipating moving to Scotland, but, the call came and I was asked if I would be interested in it. And as soon as I started to do some research into the university, I found out what a special place it is. And as I began to learn more and meet people, I also realized what a wonderful group of people there are that work here at the university and some of the magnificent things that are going on. So it was, in the end, a pretty easy decision for me to say, yes, I'd love to come and help the university as principal.
And then I'm guessing when you first arrived, what were your first impressions, I guess, of the city and of the campus as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it was all really very exciting. Aside from coming up here for a couple of days for interview to meet the senior people and the appointing committee, the board of governors, essentially, it was a really quite an exciting journey, setting off on the train from London one cold February morning in the winter. And from the moment I arrived, actually, when I was met at the station, people were incredibly friendly and helpful. And I was fortunate to be in a position where I could walk into work. So I began to pick up the vibes from the city pretty early on. And walking along the River Tay, it's just a special experience, really. And even several months on, most days, we go down and just walk along the River Tay, which is it's a lovely walk, but it's also quite inspirational, actually. I find it's a good way to clear your head and to get some fresh air in your lungs and really take in the seascape of the city. And of course, it's redolent with the maritime history. The famous sort of jute mills are part of the architectural heritage of the area. And all around is just the most wonderful countryside. And before we went into this COVID lockdown, we managed to get out and see a few of the sites and do a bit of walking, another one of my passions, and been overawed by the quality of the scenery and the outdoor life around here.
I think that's echoed by the students as well. I think, well, I'm Australian, and when I arrived, it's as friendly as Australia is the way to go. But also, you're quite right, the environment around is just delightful. It's a smaller town, but people like being able to walk and being able to see the Tay. So in the background of your, behind you, you've got a picture of the Tay, and that's on view from most of the town. So yeah, but so, and now we've got to our COVID-19 crisis. What are your thoughts about how the university is responding to the COVID-19?
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously the COVID-19 crisis is something that took everybody all around the world by surprise. And we moved fairly quickly into a lockdown situation in this country, including the university, and vacated our buildings and our premises and made them secure. I have to say that the people in the university have risen magnificently to the challenge of leaving their offices, working remotely from home, carrying on the teaching and the research and the other activities which go to make up the university's workload, and have really pulled together well in the context of this crisis. Now, of course, we're turning our attention to, well, what happens next? How do we begin to recover our university? How do we get back into our buildings? How do we get teaching started? How do we get all our researchers back into the studios, laboratories, and other areas so they can pursue their really important and vital work? But it's really been a great delight to be able to work with such a committed group of staff who've really stepped up and taken this seriously and done their absolute utmost to support our students, to ensure that the special Dundee student experience is maintained wherever we can, working remotely or working digitally. And we've tried our best to carry on as normal in spite of the difficulties that we faced.
Yeah, I've been impressed as well. I mean, I've been at the university slightly longer than you. I've been here for 26 years. But I'm also struck exactly by the same things, is that as soon as the crisis hit, the whole of the academic community and the professional staff all came together incredibly quickly to make sure that A, everybody was healthy, and B, that the education was going to continue and going forward. And that's what will be happening over the summer as we go forward. Listen, let's ask the final question for you, is that think about yourself when you were 20 years old. What would your advice be to yourself all these years later? What would your advice be to yourself when you were 20 about thinking about education, its importance, how to choose it, things like that? What would be your advice?
My advice to myself, I could just about remember back as far as 20, it's quite a long time ago, but I would say a number of things. First of all, don't worry. It's going to be okay. It'll work out just fine. And it'll work out just fine if you follow your heart, but think also with your head. So do things which really excite you, which really are going to motivate you and you'll get enjoyment from. Be aware that nothing comes for free. You have to work really hard. You have to apply yourself properly. And if you do that, at the end of every day, at the end of every term, end of every year, you'll be satisfied that you've given your best and that you've achieved what you can possibly achieve. So follow your heart, work hard, and don't worry. That's my
I love the don't worry bit. And I agree with the follow your heart. I mean, it's the passion which gets you up. It's, you want to be able to leap out of bed in the morning and say, yeah, little ripper, I'm off to do economics. I'm off to do philosophy, geography, whatever it is. And if you're in that frame of mind, you're going to be successful as you go along. And you're quite right, don't worry. Education is a journey and you get to refine it as you're going along. Listen, thanks very much, David, for joining us today. You've been fabulous and wonderful. And I'm sure people will be very interested in listening to this interview in the short while. Thanks again, and look after yourself. If you stay online, I'll turn off the recording and we can talk some more after that. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.